I wasn't supposed to see the message. It lit up on Marcus's phone as he stepped away from the table to take a call. The screen flashed briefly under the soft amber lights of the rooftop restaurant. I hadn't meant to look, honestly. I was just shifting the wine glass to avoid knocking it over. But there it was, clear as day. Let her finish the deal, then cut her loose. Sent by Gavin Reese. Our new CEO. The words seared into my mind like a silent burn. I blinked, but they didn't disappear. My hand froze mid-air. The glass nearly tipped. Across the table, the clients from Barnes Tech were laughing with their CFO. Oblivious. We'd spent the last 9 months bringing them to the table for this deal, one of the biggest partnerships in the firm's history. A full-stack AI infrastructure package valued at over $40 million. And I was the architect behind every clause, every contingency. I straightened in my seat just as Marcus returned. He gave me that usual polished grin, the one that never quite reached his eyes. But there was a flicker, a subtle narrowing of his gaze. He knew I'd seen it. I smiled back, slow and smooth. Let the game begin, I thought. The dinner continued like a well-rehearsed play. Marcus toasted to cross-functional collaboration. The clients clinked glasses, and I nodded in all the right places. But inside, something shifted. The room hadn't changed, but I had. I studied Marcus more closely now. He sat straighter than usual, checked his phone often, fingers twitching slightly with each vibration. He laughed at the wrong times. His act was intact, but only barely. The clients, however, were all warmth and praise. "Nicole, your leadership on this has been phenomenal." Eric Barnes said, "Frankly, if you were running the whole show, we'd have signed this last month." Before I could respond, the waiter returned to top off our drinks. He looked at me, then turned to Eric and said, a bit too cheerfully, "Always a pleasure serving the CEO and her team." I caught Marcus's expression just as the words landed. His knuckles went white around the stem of his glass. He didn't say a word, but that single instant, his tightening grip, his clenched jaw, told me everything. They weren't just planning to cut me loose. They were waiting for me to hand them the signed contract first. Suddenly, the laughter around me felt distant, like echoes down a hallway I no longer belonged in. The warmth of the lights, the scent of seared scallops and aged Merlot, all of it blurred under the weight of what I now knew. I smiled again, but this time not for the clients. It was for me. Something had cracked, not in me, around me, and I was already planning what to do with that crack. The wine from dinner still lingered on my tongue, but the sweetness was gone by the time I returned to my apartment that night. The city lights outside my window looked different, colder, more distant. I slipped out of my blazer, letting it fall across the back of the chair, and stared at the glowing skyline I used to find so inspiring. And just like that, the memories started flooding in. Not one, not two, but 3 promotions I should have gotten. The first was 3 years ago. Our firm had just landed the Lockwell contract, a $10 million deal I'd negotiated almost single-handedly while my supervisor was on paternity leave. I still remember the congratulatory email from the executive team. "Amazing work. Nicole, you've outdone yourself." And yet, when the internal promotion list came out that quarter, it was Marcus who got the title bump. Marcus, who had only joined 6 months earlier. Marcus, who hadn't even been in the building when I flew out to pitch Lockwell face-to-face. I swallowed the insult and kept working. The second time, I was told I was too valuable in my current role to promote. It was during the Xenotech project, another major deal I'd built from scratch. HR called it a strategic necessity to leave me where I was. Marcus called it a temporary hold. The third was just 6 months ago. I'd prepared for it, spent weeks updating my internal pitch deck, gathering peer recommendations, even mentoring 2 junior associates to show leadership initiative. And when the email came out, nothing. No mention, no explanation. Only later did I hear, through hushed hallway conversations, that the executive team thought I was a little too sharp, too precise, too independent. Apparently, a woman who doesn't rely on others is harder to control. My phone buzzed, yanking me back to the present. I glanced down and saw the name. Mom. I let it ring twice before answering, forcing some lightness into my voice. Hey, Ma! Her voice came warm and steady through the receiver. Hi, baby. Just checking in. You sounded tired the other day. I'm fine, I lied, watching my own reflection in the dark window. You sure? She pressed gently. You've been working so hard. I just hope they see that they see you. I hesitated, then smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Of course, they appreciate me, but the truth curled bitter behind my teeth. I looked away from the glass, blinking quickly. My eyes stung more than I expected. A second later, a soft ping echoed from my laptop. I leaned over to check it. It was a message from Ava, my assistant, and the one person in that building who never underestimated me. The message was brief, no subject line, just an attachment and a single line of text. You didn't get this from me. I clicked. It was a PDF. Q4 restructuring proposal. Confidential. My name wasn't on any of the upcoming leadership tracks, not even as a potential. But Marcus's name was everywhere. New team lead, strategic lead, East Coast expansion. I stared at the document, bile rising in my throat. So that's what they thought of me. A tool. A stopgap. Someone to build the bridge, but never cross it. I closed the file and sat in silence, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel it, not hide it. The bitterness. It settled into my bones like winter, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't stay there for long. Not this time. It started as just another lunch. Or at least, that's what I thought at the time, 2 months ago. Eric Barnes, COO of Barnes Tech, and our biggest client prospect, asked if I had time to meet off the record. It wasn't unusual. Eric preferred talking shop outside formal settings. I figured it'd be the usual back and forth about delivery timelines or tech specs. We met at an understated cafe on East 44th, the kind of place with white brick walls and reclaimed wood tables, where the cutlery clinks softly and the waitstaff already knows your name. Eric arrived 5 minutes early. As always, button-down sleeves rolled to his elbows. No jacket, no tie, just casual enough to lower your guard, but never sloppy. He smiled as he sat down across from me. Appreciate you making the time. Always, I said. Anything to keep this deal moving. But the moment our drinks arrived, I noticed something odd. He wasn't checking his phone, wasn't reviewing documents, just sipping his espresso and watching me, like he was studying something unspoken. Then he leaned in. Nicole, he said quietly, can I ask you something personal? I blinked. Sure. Why are you still there? I paused. Excuse me? He shrugged. I've seen your work. Your strategy decks are surgical. Your risk models? Elegant. Honestly, I've reviewed some of the deliverables your team sent. Marcus's name is on them. But the structure? That's not his thinking. It's yours. The bitterness from months of being overlooked stirred in my chest again. I kept my voice even. That's how the team works. Shared credit. Eric didn't flinch. You're better than shared credit. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt flattered. The other part? Suspicious. He swirled his cup and added, Look, I'm not trying to meddle in your career, but if you ever get tired of being underestimated, if you ever build something of your own, he paused, eyes locking onto mine. We'd fund it, The words hung between us. Direct, unpolished, sincere. I gave a small laugh to break the tension. That's a generous hypothetical. I don't do hypotheticals, he said. Especially not when I've already turned down deals from people less capable than you. That caught me. What do you mean? He leaned back in his chair. We declined a deal led by Marcus last year. Pitched hard, looked shiny on the surface. But when we dug deeper, conflicts of interest, vague performance guarantees, messy supplier relationships, sloppy. And when we asked for clarity, he raised an eyebrow. All we got was deflection. My stomach turned. That deal had been painted internally as a near miss. No one ever told me Barnes Tech walked away because of Marcus. Or why? Eric continued. Gentler now. I'm saying this because I believe in people who build things right. You do, and that's rare. The waiter came by. Neither of us had touched our food. I forced a smile, trying to play it cool, but my mind was buzzing. That conversation shouldn't have meant anything, just words over espresso. But 2 months later, sitting alone in my apartment with a signed termination notice and a silenced phone, it meant everything. Eric had seen what others refused to see, and now, I couldn't stop wondering, what would it look like to build something of my own? Not in theory, in practice. Something had been planted that day, and though I didn't know it yet, it was already beginning to grow. Some seeds don't bloom in sunlight. They grow in silence, in shadow, and sometimes in secret. After that lunch with Eric, something inside me had shifted, subtly at first, like a change in air pressure before a storm. I didn't walk out of that cafe with a grand plan or a resignation letter burning a hole in my purse. No, I walked out with a quiet question echoing in my chest. What if I could? And once that question took root, it never left. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not my mother, not my closest friends, not even Ava. I just started researching late at night, after work, in the silence of my apartment. When the city was still and the buzz of office politics couldn't reach me, I started with the basics: legal structures, tax brackets, business licenses. I combed through regulatory articles like bedtime stories, highlighting what I didn't yet understand. I wasn't building a fantasy. I was studying a blueprint. 1 week later, I walked into a downtown office and sat across from a man named Alan Ridgway, a sharp, matter-of-fact attorney who'd once worked in our company's own compliance department. He'd left 2 years ago, disillusioned with the executive team's selective ethics. When I told him what I wanted, he didn't blink. You want something airtight, he said, tapping his pen. No shortcuts, no paper trails leading back to your current employer. I nodded. I want it clean, and I want it mine. He gave a curt smile. We can do that. We spent the next 2 hours laying out a formation strategy. Alan filed the LLC under a discreet holding name, Rivers and Rowe, drawn from my middle name and my grandmother's maiden name. Neutral, untraceable unless someone was really digging. Next came the business account. I opened it quietly at a local credit union under my newly formed entity. No fancy branding, no staff, no office lease, just a number, a file, and a password only I knew. It wasn't a business yet, not really. It was a container, but it would hold something real, soon. Still, I wasn't reckless. I didn't start transferring data or whispering ideas in the hallway. If I was going to do this, it would be by the book and beyond suspicion. But I hadn't counted on Ava. She caught me late one evening, standing alone in the team server room, staring at the export logs like they were coded in Morse. You're not really watching backup logs for fun, she said, arms crossed. I turned, startled. Just doing some late admin cleanup. She raised an eyebrow. That's the worst lie you've ever told. I didn't reply, just smiled faintly and closed the window. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Whatever it is, I'm in, Unless you tell me not to be. There was a pause between us. I could have waved her off, but something in her expression, steady, loyal, brave, made me exhale. I pulled a small USB drive from my bag and held it out. No names, no details, I said. Just the client decks, my own versions, clean files, nothing proprietary, nothing signed. She took it without flinching. Give me 2 hours. And she did, that night, while most of the office scrolled through dinner menus and social feeds. Ava quietly copied over everything I'd authored in the last 18 months. Strategy briefs, risk models, budget scenarios, all original, all mine. We didn't speak much while she worked. She just handed me the drive when it was done and said, "It's on a clean partition. No metadata. You're good." I nodded. "Thank you." She paused before leaving. "Whatever you're building, it's already stronger than what they think they own." When the door closed behind her, I sat in the dark, the USB cold in my palm. This wasn't vengeance. It wasn't rebellion. It was preparation. It was the plan I never thought I'd need. Until now. There's a kind of pride that isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It lives in the quiet satisfaction of knowing you've built something others thought you couldn't. That was the kind of pride I felt as I scrolled through the final terms of the Barnes Tech contract. It was just past 7:08 in the evening. The conference room was dim except for the blue glow of my laptop and the city lights flickering beyond the window. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, but not me. Not when we were this close. The total contract value stood at $42.3 million spread over a 10-year rollout of our AI infrastructure suite. I'd refined every clause. Pricing, contingencies, data security, delivery benchmarks. Every footnote had my fingerprints. No legal assistant, no ghostwriter. This deal didn't come from a team, it came from me. At 7:34, my inbox pinged. Eric Barnes. Final review done. Looks clean on our end. We're ready when you are. I leaned back slowly, fingers tented under my chin. Ready when you are. Those words hit differently tonight. This was the kind of deal that could define a career. The kind of deal that turns associates into partners, directors into legends. Except I already knew. The legend wasn't going to have my name on it. I heard footsteps outside the conference room before the door opened. Marcus strolled in. Tie loosened. Smile too practiced. "There she is," he said, clapping his hands lightly. "Are closer." I looked up. Neutral. "Eric just confirmed. They're ready to sign." "Of course they are." He crossed the room and stood beside me, pretending to scan the contract on my screen. "You've done incredible work, Nicole, truly." There it was again. That tone, too smooth, too tight around the edges. A week ago, I might have mistaken it for genuine, but not now, not after seeing the text on his phone, not after everything I'd already put in motion. Still, I nodded politely. "Appreciate it." He lingered a second too long, then clapped my shoulder lightly and turned to leave. "Let's make history." The door clicked shut behind him. I exhaled, then hovered my mouse over the Send for Signature button. My cursor paused, just for a second. That inner voice, the one I used to silence, whispered again. Wait. The conference room door creaked open a few minutes later. Ava peeked in, her expression tight. "Hey," she whispered, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. I tilted my head. "Everything okay?" She walked over, lowered her voice. "You didn't hit send yet, right?" "No, why?" Ava glanced toward the glass walls, then back at me. "I heard something from HR. They're talking about a restructuring announcement and layoffs." I frowned. "That's not unusual during Q4. "Nicole," she said, firmer now, I also heard your name. My stomach dropped, but I kept my face still. Are you sure? Not 100%, but I trust the source. I turned back to my laptop screen. The contract stared back at me, still unsent. They said wait until next week to make anything official. Ava added, so if they're planning something, she didn't have to finish. I understood. If I sent the contract tonight, they'd have their crown jewel and no reason to keep me. I closed the document and powered down my laptop. Thanks, Ava, I said quietly. Let's hold for now. She nodded and slipped out of the room. I stood there in the half-light, arms crossed, pride radiating from somewhere deeper than any promotion could reach, because for the first time, I didn't need their title. I had the leverage, I had the client, and they had no idea what I was about to do with both. The morning started like any other, until it didn't. At 8:01 in the morning, I stepped into the office lobby, holding the same stainless steel coffee tumbler I'd carried every day for the last 3 years. Security nodded at me like always. The same elevator, the same mechanical chime. Nothing was different, yet everything was about to be. The air in the hallway outside my office felt strangely still. As I approached my desk, I noticed something odd. The door to the conference room was ajar. Inside, Marcus and 2 senior managers were huddled over something on his laptop. Their voices dropped as I passed. That's when I felt the first flicker of unease. I turned on my computer. The login screen blinked once, then froze. I typed in my credentials again. Nothing. Just a soft red warning. Access denied. I frowned and reached for my phone to call it, but before I could dial, an email alert buzzed from HR Dept Subject, Status Update. Time, 9:02 in the morning. I clicked, and my world tilted. Your employment with Synertech is terminated effective immediately. Your credentials have been deactivated. Please do not attempt to access company systems. HR will contact you for exit logistics. No salutation, no signature. Just that, 5 cold, clipped lines. I reread the email, hoping it was some kind of error, a prank, a phishing scam. But my badge had already stopped working. I realized it when I tried opening the secure folder on my desk drive, and the reader blinked red. My Slack? Logged out? My email? Gone? My calendar? Wiped. I sat frozen for a full minute. The only sound in the office, the faint buzz of the overhead lights. Then my phone buzzed. Ava! They cut you off? I just found out. I'm done. I'm leaving. I won't stand here and smile while they erase you. Another buzz followed, this time from Sarah, a junior analyst I'd mentored. I just saw the update in HR's backend. They've reassigned your projects to Marcus, without your name even listed. That was when the reality started to set in. Not just that they'd let me go, but that they were trying to erase me entirely. My fingerprints on the deal, my months of work, my leadership, my planning, my legacy, all being buried in real time. Marcus didn't look surprised when I passed him in the hallway 10 minutes later. He just offered me that same forced smile and muttered, "Hope everything works out." It wasn't a farewell. It was a performance. As I walked back to my desk for what I now realized would be the last time, I noticed something on my chair. A small manila envelope. No label, no name, just sealed shut. I glanced around. No one was watching. I opened it. Inside was a black USB drive and a yellow sticky note in Ava's handwriting. "You'll need this. It's everything you built." My throat tightened for a moment. I didn't know what to do, whether to cry, scream, or laugh. I'd spent years building up trust in that company, sacrificed weekends, holidays, and sleep, stayed late, showed up early, hit every number they asked for, and in the span of 1 minute and 5 sentences, they'd erased me. But Ava hadn't. She remembered. She saved what mattered. I slipped the USB into my bag and looked around my office one last time. The framed certificate from MIT, the shelf of AI journals, The empty chair across from mine, where clients had sat, asking me questions Marcus never could answer. And in that moment, something inside me snapped, not in rage, but in clarity. I wasn't walking out empty-handed. They'd fired me, but I still had my relationships, my knowledge. And now, thanks to Ava, my work, as I exited the building, the cold morning air slapped against my skin like a second awakening. I didn't look back, because I already knew this wasn't the end. This was the moment they made their biggest mistake, and all I had to do was stay quiet and let it unfold. That night, the silence in my apartment was unbearable. No humming laptop, no Slack pings, no calendar alerts buzzing on my phone, just stillness. I sat curled up on the couch. The only light coming from the open laptop in front of me. On the screen was the contract. My contract. The one I had spent nearly a year constructing. The one Barnes Tech had confirmed was ready for signature just 24 hours earlier. And yet now it felt radioactive. I hovered the cursor over the file name, Barnes AI Infra, Final V27, PA PDF. My finger rested on the delete key. I'd thought I was stronger than this. I'd built contingency plans. I'd registered Rivers and Row. I'd prepared a clean exit. But I hadn't prepared for the humiliation, for being discarded with no explanation. No thank you. No trace of what I'd given. I hadn't prepared for what it would feel like to be invisible. The USB Ava gave me sat on the coffee table like a lifeline I wasn't sure I deserved. I stared at the blinking cursor. Just press delete. End it. Erase the evidence. Start over. Then my phone rang. Mom. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something in me cracked, and I answered. Hi. Ma, I said, forcing my voice to sound casual. Hi, baby, she replied, her voice gentle but alert. You okay? I hesitated. Yeah, just long day. She was quiet for a second. Then, I know your long day voice. What happened? My eyes welled up, but I blinked fast. It's nothing, just corporate chaos. You know. A beat passed. Then came the question I didn't expect. Do you want me to come over? That simple offer, so soft, so sincere, hit me harder than any boardroom betrayal. She lived 2 hours away, had arthritis in both knees, and barely drove at night anymore. But she would have come, no hesitation. No, Ma, I whispered. I'm okay. I just need to get through tonight. I'll be better tomorrow. She didn't argue, just said, You don't have to be better. You just have to be honest with yourself. I choked on a response. I love you. I love you too. More than any deal. Nicole, more than any job. After we hung up, I set the phone down and just crumbled. My body shook with sobs I hadn't let myself feel all day. Grief, shame, anger, all of it poured out in thick, breathless waves. And when it passed, I sat in the stillness, arms wrapped around my knees, feeling small for the first time in years. That's when I noticed the blinking notification on my laptop. A single unopened email from 2 months ago from Eric Barnes. Subject, You know what you're worth, Sat. 2 months ago, I clicked, Nicole, I don't know what will happen with the deal, but I want you to know this. We've worked with dozens of firms, dozens of teams. You are the first person who made us feel like our vision mattered as much as our dollars. You're more than a project lead. You're a builder, a strategist. If you ever want to do something different, bigger, on your own terms, call me. We'd back you without hesitation. Eric. I sat motionless, reading the email again and again. My tears had barely dried. But something began to shift. It wasn't just the words. It was the timing. Eric had seen it in me long before I had. Before the contract. Before the termination. Before the humiliation. He had seen something worth investing in, and I had nearly deleted it. I looked back at the USB. then at the unopened folder on my desktop, then at the framed photo of me and Mom on the bookshelf, both of us grinning, arms slung around each other at my college graduation. "You know what you're worth." I whispered it aloud, like a fragile incantation. Not loud, not defiant, just enough to hear myself believe it. I didn't delete the file. Instead, I renamed it R&R Signature Ready PDF, and then I shut the laptop. Not because I was giving up, but because, for the first time in 24 hours, I knew exactly what I had to do. Tomorrow wouldn't just be a new day. It would be the first day of mine. Resolve doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's the silence after the storm, the clarity that comes when you stop asking for permission. The morning light streamed in through the blinds, slicing across the hardwood floors like a quiet spotlight. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't need to. Sleep is for healing. I wasn't healing anymore. I was moving. I sat at my kitchen table, hair pulled back, sweatshirt sleeves pushed to the elbow. In front of me was my laptop, a mug of black coffee, and the USB Ava had handed me like a torch. The contract file, now renamed R&R Signature Ready PDF, was open, identical to the original, with one exception: the signature block. The Signertech logo had been removed, replaced by a clean, minimalist header. Rivers and Rowe LLC, Authorized Representative. Nicole Everett, Chief Executive Officer. I stared at it for a long moment. It felt surreal. Seeing my name like that, not buried in the footnotes, not copy-edited out of a press release, but leading, declaring, owning. I didn't flinch. Not this time. Before I sent it, I opened a secure message window with Alan Ridgway, the compliance lawyer who helped me form Rivers and Rowe. I'd looped him in late the night before with a simple question. If I move on this tomorrow, am I bulletproof? His reply came 5 minutes later. Everything is clean. No IP conflicts. Your draft is stronger than theirs. All systems go. I trusted Alan. He'd spent years at Signertech and knew exactly where their weak points were, especially when it came to contracts and control. And this time, he wasn't on their side. I clicked into Gmail. New message. To Eric Barnes. Subject, as discussed. Attachment, R&R Signature Ready PDF. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed one simple line. Thank you for your patience. I'm ready. Then I hit send. The moment after felt eerily calm, like the air just before a bowstring snaps. I closed the laptop and walked to the window, cradling my coffee in both hands. Outside, New York was waking up, joggers cutting through the park, a delivery truck reversing with a slow beep. Just another Tuesday. Except, it wasn't. My phone buzzed. Eric Barnes. Timestamp 3 minutes after send. I tapped the notification. We approve, and yes, funding is still on the table. You're doing the right thing. We'll make the announcement jointly this Friday. Congratulations. Nicole. I stared at the screen, not breathing. Then, without thinking, I smiled. Not a grin, not triumphant, just quiet, focused. Behind that one message was everything I'd fought to believe again. That my work had value, that integrity could win, that I didn't have to play someone else's game to build something better. A second message followed from Eric's team. Please forward banking details for invoice processing. Expect the first installment within 24 hours. 24 hours. The company that fired me by email was about to watch $42 million transfer into the hands of the woman they'd erased. I sat down again, this time on the couch. My fingers trembled slightly, not with fear, but with control being restored. Piece by piece. There was one more thing I had to do. I drafted a message to Ava. No subject line, just, "It's done. You saved more than you know." She replied instantly. They're spiraling over here. Marcus hasn't left his office, but I'm smiling. Sai? I let out a slow breath and typed, Give it a week? Then let me know if you want to come build something real. No pressure, no promises. Just an open door. Before I closed the laptop again, I opened the file folder labeled Contracts. I moved the newly signed R&R copy into a new subfolder, Executed. Then I renamed the folder Built by Belief that morning. I didn't celebrate, didn't pour champagne, didn't tell my mother just yet. There would be time for all of that. For now, I just needed to sit with it, this new weight, this new direction, the risk I'd just taken, and the fire it was going to start. I'd signed the biggest deal in company history, only it wasn't their company anymore. It was mine. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly, printed in black and white, on the front page, by 9:04 the next morning. The headline had already broken. Barnes Tech signs $42 AI infrastructure deal with Rivers & Rowe, LLC. Tech Edge Daily. I read it once, then again. It was real. It was published. And it didn't mention Synertech. Not once. The article included a photo of Eric Barnes shaking hands with a faceless woman, cropped just enough that no one could tell it was me. The caption read, New tech firm, led by former Synertech strategist, finalizes largest private sector AI deal of the quarter. Strategist, not executive, not manager, but the message was clear to anyone who'd been paying attention. I waited for the fallout. It came faster than I expected. By 9:15, my phone started buzzing. Unknown numbers, former co-workers, even a journalist I hadn't spoken to since the Lockwell launch. I ignored every call. Then a name flashed on my screen that made me pause. Marcus. First call, then a second, then 4 more. Each one I sent straight to voicemail. Then came the text. Nicole, we need to talk. Urgent. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the article to Alan, my attorney, with one line. Prepare for inbound noise. I'm not answering anything today. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji and a note. Proud of you. Let the silence speak. I was still sipping coffee when Ava messaged me. Short and fast. They just saw it. Marcus slammed his laptop shut so hard it cracked. I couldn't help but smile. Another message came seconds later. Lindsay from PR is walking around like someone shot her. She asked 3 people. Who is Rivers & Rowe? I hadn't told anyone the name of my LLC. Not even Ava until the morning I sent the contract. That anonymity made the reveal even sweeter. Now they knew. Now it was public. Now they were scrambling. A few hours later, Ava sent another update. Just overheard Marcus on the phone saying, We've lost leverage. It's out of our hands. He sounds defeated. That was the shift. For years, Marcus had moved like someone untouchable, always a step ahead in politics, always just charming enough to dodge consequences. But this deal had exposed what Synertech refused to admit. He didn't build the bridge. He just walked across it. I had built it. Every number, every provision, every clause in that deal was mine. I knew where the client pain points were, which legal teams needed extra time, which metrics would make procurement say yes. And now that knowledge had value, not as an employee, but as an equal. At 11:01, I received an unexpected call from an internal number at Synertech. I let it ring. Then, out of curiosity, I listened to the voicemail. It was Linda, the company's longtime PR director. Hi, Nicole. I just saw the article. I don't know what to say. I'm surprised, honestly. A bit impressed. I hope we can catch up sometime. Maybe clear the air? The air, I thought, had never been clearer. I forwarded that voicemail to Ava, who replied, Linda's in full crisis mode. She just asked if anyone had your personal email. Should I pretend not to have it? I laughed quietly and wrote back, pretend like we've never met. That afternoon, I stepped out of my apartment for a walk. The chill in the air didn't bite as sharply today. Something about walking past the newsstands, watching people scroll on their phones. Knowing my name, though not printed, was behind every headline. It felt like reclaiming space. I wasn't just taking a breath. I was making room back home. I opened my laptop again and read through the article a third time. Slower now, I let each word sink in. Each line carried more than the deal. It carried narrative. They had tried to erase me. Now, my absence was the story. And for the first time since that termination email hit my inbox, I didn't feel like someone trying to recover from a blow. I felt like someone holding the pen. The contract didn't land where they thought it would. It landed exactly where it belonged. There's a kind of validation that doesn't need trophies or applause. It arrives quietly, in an inbox, with subject lines that make your breath catch. It started with one. At 8:09 the next morning, I got a message from Claire Hoskins, Director of Procurement at Veltonic Solutions. Claire and I had worked closely for 2 years. Through every minor contract renewal and major systems upgrade, we'd built more than a workflow. We'd built trust. Subject, checking in. Nicole, just saw the news. I don't know the full story, but I know this. We want to move our account over to Rivers & Rowe. The leadership here unanimously agreed. We weren't loyal to the brand. We were loyal to you. I stared at the message for a few seconds before I exhaled. Then came the next, Graham Lee, a CTO from a smaller health tech firm we'd onboarded just last quarter. Not surprised to see you behind the deal. We always knew the magic didn't come from Synertech. Let us know what it takes to transition under your new umbrella. We're in. 2 messages in 10 minutes. My inbox felt like it was pulsing. And then a third one landed. Elena Patel, head of systems at Cast Iron Logistics, a woman who once told me I was the only person in this entire sector who listens before talking. Nicole, we saw the Rivers & Rowe announcement. Let's skip the PR games. I always knew you were the reason we stayed through those budget cuts and reorgs. Let's set up a migration plan. No delay. P.S. I hope Ava's with you. That girl is sharp. I laughed at the last line and forwarded it to Ava, who replied immediately, Are we building a new client wall yet? Because this email deserves a frame. But the one that caught me most arrived just before lunch. Subject, Congratulations, from Daniel M. Chen, CEO, Barnes Tech. It was short, direct, the way Daniel always was. We're ready to deepen our partnership. When you're ready to talk about product development, we'd like to explore investment options. Let's set a meeting next week. I leaned back. Heart racing, not from fear, but from quiet awe. Daniel wasn't just renewing the contract, he was offering to invest in my next move. Not because of Rivers & Rowe's track record, there was none. Not because of Synertech's reputation, they'd been scrubbed from this equation. He wanted to invest in me, for years. I'd carried the weight of execution, while others collected the credit. I had stayed late, flown across time zones, translated jargon into clarity for boardrooms full of men who wouldn't remember my name until the numbers hit. I had watched Marcus smile through my success, but today, the names in my inbox remembered, and they chose. At 2:47 in the afternoon, I stood at my new co-working space's window, looking down at the street below. I hadn't decorated the space yet. No plaques, no logo on the glass, just a desk, a screen, and a whiteboard filled with scribbled ideas. But I didn't need more to feel it. The shift, for so long. I'd measured my value by what others were willing to acknowledge. Promotions withheld, praise redirected, ideas recycled and returned to me with someone else's name at the top. Now. The recognition wasn't just symbolic. It was operational, financial, tangible. It was 4 major clients moving entire portfolios over without needing a pitch, without asking for discount rates or introductory offers. They weren't chasing a brand. They were following trust. There was a knock on the glass wall behind me. I turned to see Ben, the community coordinator at the space. Delivery for Rivers and Row, he said, holding a modest white envelope and a small rectangular box. I opened it after he left. Inside the envelope, a handwritten card from Claire at Veltonics. We always knew who we were really working with. Here's to building something better. Inside the box, a sleek pen, engraved simply, "Lead, don't follow." I ran my thumb along the lettering, smiling. The irony wasn't lost on me. Synertech had refused to give me an executive title, despite years of leading without one, now without them. I had a company, a contract, a growing client base, and more importantly, my name on every document. Validation didn't come with a trophy, it came with belief. And this time, it was finally mine. When you're right, you don't have to shout. You just have to show up with the facts, and let the silence do the rest. The letter arrived by courier at 8:37 in the morning. Heavy cardstock, Synertech letterhead. Legal department watermark, faint but unmistakable. Inside, this correspondence serves as formal notice of pending legal action regarding unauthorized client interference and breach of proprietary agreements. I didn't read the rest. I didn't need to. They were suing me. For what? For outmaneuvering them legally? For saving my own work? For refusing to sign a contract they never offered in the first place? I slid the letter across the table toward Alan Ridgway, who was sipping his second espresso across from me in our shared conference space downtown. His reading glasses slid down his nose as he scanned the document with a dry, unimpressed smirk. "They're really doing this?" I asked, almost laughing. Alan shrugged. "Of course they are. It's not about winning. It's about intimidation." I leaned back. "They want to make noise. They're losing control," he said, tapping the paper. "You took their biggest account, their best strategist, and 4 long-term clients, all legally. They're panicking." He flipped to the back page and let out a chuckle. "Look who signed this." I leaned forward. Matthew Ivers, Synertech's newly promoted in-house legal counsel. I'd met him once at a conference. Polished, sharp, young, maybe too young. Alan laughed again and leaned back. "He was my intern, back when I still wore cheap suits and wrote actual contracts by hand." I raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I taught him everything he knows. Unfortunately, not everything I know." He folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. "I'll draft a reply today. You'll never see a courtroom." "Confident?" "Nicole," Alan said with a grin, "you were never even officially an employee. There's no non-compete, no intellectual property clause. They classified you as a contractor to avoid paying full benefits, remember?" I nodded. I remembered all too well. Every time I'd asked about full-time status. They told me it was pending or in review. They loved my flexibility, my ability to bill hours without getting paid time off. They'd kept me dangling for years, quietly useful, quietly disposable. But now, that technicality, one they thought would save them money, was going to bury their lawsuit. Alan continued, "We'll respond with a copy of your original onboarding email, your contractor terms, and your last tax document. It'll take 1 round of responses before they fold." He stood up, adjusting his blazer. "And just to be safe, I'll blind copy the Bar Association Ethics Committee on our response." I looked up, surprised. "You think it'll go that far?" Alan gave a half smile. "No, but it'll make Matthew sweat." Later that afternoon, I received an email with Alan's drafted response. It was clinical, bulletproof, and scathing in all the right ways. He closed with a line I hadn't expected, but instantly loved. "My client will not be intimidated by a company that refused to recognize her value, on paper or otherwise." I read that line 3 times, then once more, just to let it sink in. There was no need for revenge, no fire, no fury, just facts and dignity. I forwarded the email to Ava with the note. "They poked the wrong lawyer." She replied instantly, "They poked the wrong woman." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, not because they backed down, but because I never had to yell to be heard. This time, the law was on my side, and finally, so was the truth. Victory doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes, it hangs quietly in a frame. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of my new office, soft and golden, warming the white oak floors and the sleek, matte-finished desk I'd chosen just last month. On the wall behind me hung a single frame. No diploma, no press clipping, just a printed screenshot, mounted under glass. "Let her finish the deal, then cut her loose." Sent at 7:52 in the evening. No sender name, no company logo, just those words. My hand brushed the edge of the frame as I straightened it, as I did every morning. The message that ended my career had started my empire. The door creaked open gently behind me. "Nicole?" I turned, smiling instantly. Mom stood in the doorway, her coat folded over one arm, hair pinned neatly, smile both proud and weary. She didn't visit the city often anymore. 2 hours of traffic was hard on her knees, but she insisted on seeing the new space in person. I walked over and hugged her. She held me tight for longer than usual. "I brought muffins," she said, handing me a small paper bag. "Still warm?" "Blackberry?" I asked. "Of course. You think I'd forget?" We laughed. I guided her in and offered the seat by the window, the one I always pictured her in when I first imagined having my own office. Her gaze wandered around the space, lingering on the bookshelves, the potted ficus, the stack of investor portfolios on my desk. But her eyes stopped at the frame. She leaned in slowly, squinting. When she read the message, her face went still. Then she exhaled, soft but certain. "They didn't fire you," she said. "They freed you." I swallowed, nodding once. "Yeah, they did." She looked at me, something shimmering behind her smile. "And you walked out with the very thing they thought they were taking." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My phone buzzed once on the desk. I glanced at the screen. Tech Edge Morning Report. Breaking. 5 key clients officially cut ties with Synertech as of this morning. Rivers and Rowe, founded by former strategist Nicole Everett, is now valued at 3 times Synertech's current market cap. I let out a quiet breath, then turned the phone so Mom could see. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. 3 times? I nodded, still processing it myself. And that's without even launching our product division. She leaned back, eyes misty now. "You always did color outside the lines. I just didn't realize you were drawing a new map." We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that holds everything unspoken. Outside the glass, the city moved as it always did, impatient, buzzing, ruthless. But in here, there was space, room to breathe, room to build, room to become what I had always known I could be, if someone, anyone, had just believed. Turns out, I didn't need their belief, just my own. I looked back at the frame one last time. The message that tried to erase me had become my cornerstone. They'd cut me loose, and I had flown.